Hello everyone and welcome to this beginner tutorial video where I'm going to be showing you some extra tactics for making your instrument panels that much better. If you don't know what I'm talking about these things. So as you can see here, in this case we have buttons and we have indicators and dials. Now what if you want to have the functionality where you can press things on one, press things on another, and they sort of work together in parallel. Now there's some easy ways to do things and there's some more complex ways to do things, as is always, but let's begin. Now I highly recommend you watch my other video, which is linked above, which talks about how to get these instrument panel working. So as you may note that there is a backlight function, but unlike buttons and other types of things, you have a composite. You have composite in and composite out. Now, how does this composite work? Well, I'm going to quickly breeze over it and then we'll get into the meat of the video. But pretty much, if you start with an empty microcontroller, you got to add the composite input and then you got to add your other buttons. Now, you could just do this really quickly like this. And in my other video, again, I show you how to make a very unique system, very detailed system, such that you can have multiple things happening at once. Now, for example, in this case, the buttons would have to be selected as outputs. And what you do is you have a bunch of these buttons, you have your input, and you can tie it together with the composite function. So once you find the right function, it's literally just this, and this is how to get a very simple composite button working, and you of course tie these into there. Now, because none of this was labeled, none of this makes sense, you do want to go and at least list them like this so we just know what the channels are. Otherwise you're going to be completely lost. And you could see here we didn't really do it properly. This one's channel 4, 2, 3, 1, so I'd probably, for my own sake, just put it properly like this and then have it. So this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4. All right, and then you set these. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Now this function will work in your game such that if you tie this to this, you can have it toggle, let's say, a light. So that can be one of our channels. In fact, that will be channel number 1. So that will be the light. Next, let's put something else. Lights are easy just because you could see that they're working properly. So I'll make that channel 2. Now we will put a battery, and what I'm going to do is attach everything to the battery just so it all works. Now keep in mind, if you are using these red sort of flip switches, they don't need electricity, but indicators, buttons, things like that do. So if you have a backlight, you'll need that. Anyway, now if we spawn this in, you'll see that if we press this and this, we get things going. Now, oh, take a look at that. So mistake. You got to go into this and set the channel to match what you're trying to do. So this would be the light, and this would be the other light. This would be the spinning light or rotating. And now we'll deal with the indicators in a bit, but pretty much now with the channel set 1 and 2, you can actually now utilize them properly here. And as long as this is listed properly, so 1, 2, all this stuff, and as long as these here are connected properly, and of course plugged into electricity, now we should get it working. So in this case, channel 1, light. Channel 2, the rotating light. Now what if you want to control these from this one as well? Now of course maybe you don't have them side by side, you have them on other parts of your creation. How do you get these lights to work with a second instrument panel? But before we do that, let's tie in the rest of these instrument panel factors, including the light up indicator and the dial. So as you can see here, we made everything be button form. So in this case, you could have an instrument panel with 4 buttons. you press channels 1 through 4 and everything will turn on properly. Now you don't have to stop at 4, nothing's limiting you. So what we can do is now have the other part of the microcontroller. That's why I left it open. So what you'll do, or what you can do, is put a composite output. Now you'll need that output because when you go here, you'll see it kind of comes into this portion. Now what we do is, let's say we have our indicator, which will be a on-off input, not output. So this will be channel 5. Let's just go with channel 5. And channel 6 will be our dial. So it'll be a number input, and we'll call it channel 6. Now, because you are using the other side of the equation, meaning these are all outputs through 1 through 4, you actually could make these ones here not be channel 5 and 6. So this is the first tip I'm giving you, is you actually could make repetitive channel uses in the other direction. Okay, so it doesn't have to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because these are going on the input function, whereas these were collecting information. So that's the first tip. We could make this channel 1 and make this channel 2, and this will still work. But just for the clarity of things, I'm going to keep them like this. And now what we'll need is our other composite function node, and you'll see that it looks like this for one of them and like this for the other. Now we'll plug this into here and plug this into here. And this is what I was talking about. So you can see it says start channel 1 and channel count. Of course, that just increases the size of this portion. But now, because we said we're going to call this channel 5, let's go ahead and set it to channel 5. And likewise, this one will set to channel 6. But again, just going back for a sec, you can put this to be channel 1 as well. And actually, this can be channel 1 because you have to think about it. Each one of these nodes, first of all, there's 4 types of things you see here. Okay, you see, if we go here, you probably get a better explanation. So you have number inputs, number outputs. If I put another one here, like this. So all of these 1, 2, 3, 4 count differently. So when you have these 4, so the dot, the one dot with the hole, the dot with the hole, the dot with the not hole, and colors, there's 4 different types here. So each one of these could be on channel 1 and it'll still work. But again, that's getting a bit complex, and then you want to do some trial and error. So just for the simplicity of things, I'm going to keep it like this, and I'm going to remove that new one. So you could see here now, I've added channel 5 and 6. Of course, it has to be attached to this. Now, if I plug this in there, I can't also plug this in there. So what you'll want to do is this feeds into this. Now, this is starting to get where I'm trying to explain. You can have pass-through composite channels. See that? So that's a pass-through. And it's actually taking this information, passing it through to this one, and passing it through to that there. If I go back into the game, you can actually then take this and plug it into there. Okay, now we're still talking about the other video. We're not really getting into anything too crazy yet, especially because this isn't anything new. We're just doing a short recap here. But now let's make this button what's going to toggle our indicator. And we got to make sure we make that indicator on channel 5. And likewise on this one, we'll be matching everything. So whatever we do here, but let's just focus only on the blue one for now. So this here, channel 5, is our indicator whether that button is toggled. And lastly, we have a dial, and that's going to be channel 6, and it's going to contain some information. We could make it the pressure, we could make it any type of thing. So let's just take a fluid sensor, for example, and attach it to here. It's going to output where our height is relative to water. So whatever, just some number that goes. We could also put temperature, whatever. Anyway, that is channel 6, as you note in here. And if we go back into the game, as long as this is set to channel 6, and we can call it whatever water level, that should be all. The last thing is to connect the button to the battery. Just make sure everything's connected. And now with your instrument panel, we can turn that on, we could turn that on. If we press this, that will actually light up. Cool. And finally here you see that we get the water level. Nothing here is new, so this is all a review, a recap on the previous one. But what is important is, let's say now you want to add yourself a second button doing this exact same function, okay? So, simple enough idea. You have another button, I'm just going to color it yellow, and you want it to also do the same stuff, output the same indicator, and toggle the same buttons. So, what you'd think to do first, of course, other than plugging in electricity, is to set your composite channel onto it. So what you can do is grab this, put it there. And you can see that these types of nodes, the output nodes, can actually go to 2 locations. But what can't go to 2 locations is the input node. So if you put that there, this one actually left. So you have to choose one or the other. Obviously that's not very good for you, because when you're trying this, you'll know that this button cannot send any information. It can receive, sure, so if we spawn it into the game, it'll be receiving. So if you have a purely informative system like this, you could see that both of them are receiving, and if I turn that on, both have that light on. So really, what you can do is very simply have a node that has information coming to it, and that will just be in the form of this output node coming into here. But that's not what we want. We want the buttons to actually work. And this is where this pass-through function gets really nice, because you can see that if we just remove everything, if we remove all of these, what we can do is make sort of a chain of things that can communicate with each other and communicate with the microcontroller. So let's start here. We go here, boom. Then we'll take this one, plug it into there, okay? Then we'll take this and drag it over to the microcontroller. Now we've created a closed loop here. So in theory, you'd think it would work. Water levels, check. This button turns on both indicators, check. But look at that. This is not turning on, but over here, it's turning on. Why is that? Well, I actually had to kind of research into this, but pretty much what you can expect is that, yeah, this is going to here, this is passing through to there, and over there, it's not making its way back to here. It's not passing through properly. And pretty much that may be a little confusing, but what you have to imagine is those numbers, channel 1 and 2, here, when they go from here to here, this instrument panel will nullify it, meaning you've turned channel 1 on here, it hits this one, this guy actually has channel 1 off, and now it's like, no, sorry, it's not happening, because now you're actually, this one's canceling it. Now you might think, alright, well, let's try here. We can take this input and shove it onto this and make another chain. So this goes to this, to this, to this, and back out. So now it's actually passing through, and it's kind of creating a constant loop. But that still will not work for you, because that doesn't actually stop the fact that this one here is canceling what you're trying to pass through. It's stopping channel 1 and 2 from continuing their loop and going back there. Only this one can turn it on, because this one's the last one in that sequence. Now I did notice this early on in playing Stormworks, and to combat it, what I did is probably the beginner's thing to do, is I just made an entirely new button and called it, like, this would be called my instrument panel 1, and the other one would be called instrument panel 2. So this is, call it the easiest or the beginner's way of doing things, just because what it does, it's kind of a clean system where you can have 2 instrument panels, 1 and 2. So as you can see, I'm just going to relabel it. So you have instrument panel 1, instrument panel 2, and at least one thing, if anything, you want to take away from this is you don't have to repeat the one that was feeding the lights. So this one here can easily go to both, okay? Even if you ignore this. So this one goes to there, but the one that's feeding the output can go to mini. So you don't need to have a second output, at least. If you take anything away from this, you don't need a second output, but you'll need for sure 2 inputs. And the reason for that, if you're following this system or this method, you'll need 2 of the inputs. So if we go here, set it to be an input, you'd come to here, and then you'd pretty much do this. You'd grab these guys, go to there, and make a repetitive thing. This pass through doesn't have to happen. And now we use our simple OR function. So again, this is, call it the easy way to do it, or the visual way to do it. And all you'd be doing is attaching all these nodes to the OR function, attaching all these nodes to the OR function, and plugging them into whatever you're trying to control. So in this case, we are only using the first 2 of the buttons, but I don't know why I'm controlling still the rest. You're really only using 1 and 2. So I guess just to make things cleaner, let's remove this, and let's remove this, and let's even remove channels 3 and 4, just to stop confusion. All right, so now we have our OR function. I accidentally pressed back. If you do that, you're gonna have to start from scratch, but anyway, I ended up doing the same thing. So set them channel 1 2, channel 1 2 with the OR. This time we update it, that's very important. And now I can set this to go to the other instrument panel, and I don't have to have any kind of chaining between them. So if I cancel these 2, you can see that this one is channel 1, this one is instrument panel 2, so instrument panel 1, instrument panel 2, and this is kind of the data coming to it. So over here now, this turns on the light. That would also turn light on, but if we do that, boom, turns it on. This turns on the spinning light, this turns on the spinning light, and of course, all of these are working. So if you want to get fancy, you could do, instead of an OR function in here, depending on what you want, you can do an XOR, which would mean if you turn on both of, so if you turn the lights on in one, and then if you turn the light on the other, it'll actually turn itself off. So maybe that's the one you want. That's just purely preference. There's nothing here that I'm trying to show in this video, but really, if you turn that on there, you could actually turn it off there, turn it back on. So it's kind of like a two-way switch. That's all it does. It makes a two-way switch, like what you have in your house. If you have a big room, you got to switch on one end, switch on another, and you can turn it on or off. But overall, the idea is the same. In this case, we don't have that. But regardless, now you have two instrument panels working and feeding this data. Now again, I was saying that this is sort of a more beginner approach. And the only reason I'm saying that is because this mentality of putting these OR functions is very much something that we're used to from the regular Boolean or the on-off switches that we were dealing with in certain instances. For example, if you just want an OR function, you'd have your OR function here, and now you can have button 1 and button 2 turning on said light, like this and this, and this here would be toggled on by that. So it's a very Boolean approach rather than using a composite approach, which we have some special other things to our disposal. And what are those special things? Well, they're the fact we have 32 channels. So we have 32 channels at our disposal with the composite, and that is where we can get interesting. Now, if you take a look at my Unicon container system, what I did not want to do was make this microcontroller any bigger than I had to. So in this microcontroller, I have the instrument panel, one of them, only one. And how I got it to work with 3 buttons. So you have one button here, you have one button here, and you have one button here, or one instrument panel. So you have 3 instrument panels all working with one button, or one node going into the microcontroller right here. So that's where the channels come in. So what you'd want to do is, say you label this 1, label this 2, you go over here, you actually label this 3, label this 4, and this can go on forever. You can keep going. Obviously, well, not forever, sorry. You can only do this up until 32 channels. So that's our limitation. It's the amount of channels we have in the available to us in the composite. So now what you do is channel 1, 2, channel 3, 4, and then let's go 5, and let's go 6. So now what we've done is, rather than it being chained up and stopping because channel 1 and 2 control the light, here channel 1 and 2 also control the light, so even if you turn this one on, this one to turn it off, no, now they're all on separate channels. So now we would actually chain it up together. So now we'd ignore all this and we'd start the exact same thing we did previously. So you'd take this, feed it to there. You take this, feed it to there, there, and grab this guy and bring it all the way to there. So now it's all chained up. It's all tied together. It's a closed loop system. And in this case, you don't need your instrument panel 2, because what you're doing is you're just making a closed loop system with the available composite connectors. So now, rather than this OR system and all this stuff, what you'd want to do is now take this, put it there and there, and then you do what we just did. So channel 1 and 2, we'll call this 3, we'll call this 4, this one is 5, this one is 6. Attach all these to all these, and now yes, you still do need your function, you still do need your OR. Now if you have more than one, what I always do is I always grab something like this, and I'll just make a pre-made one real quick. So X or Y or Z or W, and I'll have this one, and then I'll just start throwing in all of these into there, and these into here, and that goes to there, that goes to there. So we don't need the third one. So yeah, you still need the OR function. Now these act just like it OR functions in parallel, because you could do this, just because this is for beginners. So in theory, if you had a 3 node, you'd go like this. You'd go 1 into there, you'd go the second one into there, and then you'd have an OR with that to there. And that is, this part here is the same as what I've just done here. In fact, I added a 4th channel as well if you had another button, but it doesn't matter. Point is, now with these various channels, they will control the light coming out of this. So if we toggle this, you'll see first that this, well, only controlling that. We got to take a look. The water level thing is good, so that's at least one win. But now here, that's on, and that's on, and likewise this can control all of these. Oh, now the indicator is on for everything. So there's some kind of issue we're having happen here, and you'll see that when we do this and when we do that, the final one is what turns on that. So this is where what we did previously doesn't work, because now what we've introduced is a channel 5. All right, there's a channel 5 here that toggles something on and off. There's also a channel 5 that toggles the light indicator. So when you press the toggle button, so you can see here, and even with this removed, it'll still get interference. Why will it get interference? Well, remember the closed loop thing. You're passing information from one node to the next. So as things go from here to there, to there, to there, back to there, you're not able to communicate that indicator because it is being blocked by the fact that our other channel 5, which is this one here, is stopping it. That's why you noticed when I turned that button on there, which is our channel 5 light, everything lights up. All the indicators light up only then. So I do recommend in the end that if you are doing this kind of daisy chain system where you like attach multiple things together, that you do keep different channels for different things. What I always do is I will start this one off, say channel 10. So you just give yourself a little bit of buffer. So you can have these ones be single digit numbers, and then you have these ones starting off in double digits. So this one would be 10, and just for my own sanity, this would be 11. You could also make this be 10. Remember what I said? Because these are two separate things. So remember how I went to this and showed you that these were all separate? Well, they are separate. Well, what's really separate is Boolean, which is on and off, right here, and number. These are absolutely separate. Channel 1 and channel 1 of each of these are entirely different. But channel 1 and channel 1 of this, yes, different if you program it to be different. If you program it to be kind of what I just did inadvertently here, you'll end up stealing the signal. Probably sounds very confusing, but again, just for the sake of this, I recommend you set these to be double digits and all of the other ones to be single digits. So keep in mind now, this is actually channel 1, channel 3, and channel 5. This is channel 2, channel 4, and channel 6. So that's actually what is being toggled, or the channels that toggle these. This is our instrument panel, this is 10, and this is 11. I guess we said we can also put it as channel 10 because it is a number, whereas this is a Boolean. So here, channel 10, but on, off, and number. So now if we do this, we just have to make sure we now go and toggle these to be separate in there, like that. And you have to do it in all of them. There's nothing really fast in Stormworks. You have to do things manually, but end of the day, just like engineering, if I'm making a big model, I gotta do the time. I gotta put in the effort and make it work. So anyways, now that everything here is channel 10 for the number and the indicator, whereas of course the top numbers are all different channels, well, if you spawn it in the game, you press this, and boom, all your indicators work. Now you'll note that previously our water levels were always showing on all of them, and that is because we were using channel 6, I think. But and even though this one's channel 6, this is a number, this is on off, so it wasn't interfering. But now we've canceled that interference, so what you have is a sequence of things that can turn on and trigger this. Now again, you can set it to XOR or whatever you want, but the point is now you have multiple instrument panels doing multiple things. So now that we have all that information, I will just summarize it up for you because it may be a little confusing. We'll start from scratch real quick. So what you'll do, if you want to have two different instrument panels operating the same things, these lights, you'll want to use different channels for your buttons. So if you have a button here and a button here, whether push or whatever, you'll want to set this to channel 1, say this to channel 2. This here, if you want the same one, you'll want to set it to channel 3. Set this one to channel 4. And again, the reason for that is because when everything is said and done, it doesn't block your signal. Your signal's not blocked. Now for the indicators or for dials, that can be on a different style. Those can be the same. So for dials, you can leave it channel 1. For indicators, you just got to be careful because indicators are on-off switches. So you'll want to not use the same one that you've used here. So if you set it to 4, you're going to mess yourself up because what's going to happen is it's going to be toggled by this button. So indicators, I recommend you start off, let's say in the double digits. So this one here too, if you wanted this to be an indicator, you'd set it to the double digits. Now, because the numbers work on the same channel, but a number channel, consider it like a number channel and a Boolean channel. The number channel 1 would work. Now, I'm not going to show you how to redo the instrument panel, but pretty much, or the microcontroller, but you'll want to have this where the on-off switches are all on separate channels and our values here for the instrument panel and for the dial, or the indicator and the dial are using, say, double digits or whatever, and yes, you can repeat them. Channel 10, this is a number channel, this is a Boolean channel. So this is totally okay. I actually made this error on this rat loader that I made with Zinoa, and you can see here we have an instrument panel here that controls the front winches and rear winches. Now the rear winch in is 1, rear winch in is 2, rear winch out is 1. If I go back to the back of the truck, you can see here, rear winch in 2, out 1. Okay, so while that sounds all good and dandy, if we take a look at the way the composite works, well, it comes from this one, goes down to this one, and goes to the winch control. Well, what do you think happens? When you press the one in the cockpit here, if you go up there, if you press this rear winch out, this will actually not get triggered because this microcontroller or this instrument panel buttons are blocking it. So now that we have the tools at our disposal to fix this, let's do it together. We're going to go and see here, this is our winch control. It goes to there and it goes up to that instrument panel up there. So this one goes actually and feeds into the up and down of this medium winch. So when we have the buttons here, 1 and 2, 1 and 2 up in the cockpit does not work. So what we got to go is go into this and add 3 and 4. And by adding 3 and 4, we can now just use a simple OR function. Attach these like that, attach this like that, and pass them on through to there. That's it. So very much for just buttons, this is all you got to do. And now that we've set that, we just got to make our way here into this area and change our rear winch in and rear winch out. So this was previously 1, well, now it's 3. This is previously 2, well, now it's 4. So as you can see with this rope, when I do that, it starts to drop. When I do this, it starts to go up. And then here in the cabin, if I press rear winch in, it goes in. If I press rear winch out, it'll start to drop down. So you could see that we made that button work now for both of those things. Now just one neat and kind of final thing I'm going to leave you with is you can plug in multiple outputs into things. So you can see that I actually have this output going to the signal there for the winch itself, for the rear winch. So it goes just through that, doesn't matter. But I also have another one going to this winch microcontroller, which actually feeds the front winch. Now, the one thing that you don't want to do and confuse is the channels again. So even in this instant, when I have 2 different channels or different microcontrollers being fed by the buttons here, you just got to make sure they're different. So here I have the front winch on channel 5 and channel 6, whereas my rear winch on 4 and 3. So if I went into the microcontroller for the front winch, you'll see that I'm using channel 5 and channel 6. But now you can have different buttons on your instrument panel running to different microcontrollers. Just to quickly put that in perspective here, just so you're aware. Previously, we talked about having one microcontroller feeding information to and from 3 different instrument panels. What if you have 2 microcontrollers and you want to split the buttons between them on one single instrument panel? Yes, you can do that, but again, you just got to be cautious of all the channels. Just to avoid confusion, I am going to remove pretty much everything here, just so we have a very simple microcontroller, just so I can pretty much show you what I'm talking about. If we delete everything. So you can have channel 1 here, and you're going to be using your composite function to receive this value. So just like this and this. Okay, very simple. Instrument panel, channel 1, button. Done. Very, very simple. Now, what if you want to have the same instrument panel working through a different microcontroller? Well, yes, you can. I'm just going to remove the other stuff here, the instrument indicator and whatnot. So we have 2 buttons on one single instrument panel. Yes, they can go and feed 2 different microcontrollers. And if we set this one here to be a different channel, let's just say channel 2 to keep things simple, and set this to the rotating light, the same thing will happen. Now, of course, this isn't really advantageous to you to have two different microcontrollers controlling these things, but this is a very simplistic example where it's very easy to have this and that. But what I'm talking about is, for example, in a helicopter where an instrument panel can control an autopilot and also control, call it landing gear. Well, this will go to the big autopilot microcontroller, and this will go to the small landing gear, just kind of a simple up down, whatever. But you can split the channels that way. You just got to be very careful that you're not accidentally recycling channels between the different microcontrollers, because then it's gonna, whatever you press, like if you had not this and this, but if you had in here this one to set to channel 1, then you'd actually toggle both things. Now maybe you want that, maybe you want one button to toggle the autopilot and the landing gear, but there's a lot of instances that doesn't work. So anyway, thank you all for watching. Hopefully that wasn't a bunch of mumbo jumbo. You do have to have some basic knowledge on how to make instrument panels work, so I recommend you take a look at that other video. But hopefully this kind of gave you a bit of a better insight onto exactly how powerful these things are, because it does give you a wide variety of control over your creation. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more creations, stay tuned for more videos, and as always, happy Stormworksing everyone. See you next time.